believe that piece of software is doing the right thing? Why do I believe its output is correct? And in the case of paper ballots, you can sort of do statistical sampling and look at the inputs that the software looked at and look at the outputs and say, yeah, it did the right thing on a statistical confidence level. You know, I don't know if you're talking about auditing of software or auditing of the particular inputs and outputs. The auditing of the software itself is an unsolved problem. We don't have good techniques in computer science yet for providing assurance that software will do the right thing all the time. You shouldn't expect that of a certification process that looks at the software. The looking at the software that's done in the certification now is a good hygiene check. It's not using obsolete encryption. It's you know, not putting passwords in the clear or whatever. But it doesn't provide the kind of assurances that you really want if you want to convince the losing candidate that he lost the election fair and square. Software is enormously subtle, enormously complicated. It can you know, play tricks on itself and overrun stacks and do all kinds of things that just are surprising. There are people who run classes like Avi Rubin sometimes divide the class in two and tell part A to take this voting system and put a glitch in it that see if part B of the class can detect it, and they don't. You know, I mean, it's easy to hide in software malware and misbehaving things and so on too. So auditing the software per se is so complicated that we ought to stay away from that whenever possible. If some part of your argument to a losing candidate is, and you lost because this software says so, that's not a good argument. Right.
But on the output input audit.
On the input-output side, if you can statistically check, you can say, well, if you take, you know, a sample of 400 ballots out of these 10 million ballots that were cast, and you do the appropriate tests, then you can say, yes, the counting was done properly, and the statistics will support that. So you've got a counting process that's checkable because the input-output relation is checkable, but just by statistically sampling. Yeah, and so that's a very different kind of check. You don't need to trust the software being correct. And this is the point of the paper that John Wack and I wrote a while ago called Software Independence. You'd like it to be the case that the outcome of the election cannot be changed by an undetectable error or bug in the software. If you're depending on the software being correct in order to trust the correctness of the election outcome, you're in a very precarious spot because software isn't correct. Commercial software has 3 bugs or so for every 1,000 lines. Some of those bugs may be enough to cause the election outcome to be incorrect. Typical software runs for many millions of lines. So all software that's out there is commercial software, has bugs in it. I don't think there's any vendor here that would claim that their software is totally bug-free and would turn their company over for you if you found a bug in their software. It just isn't going to happen, right? I mean, so software is known to be buggy, and if you're counting on the correctness of the software for the correctness of the election outcome, you're in trouble. But if you can check the correct behavior of the software on a particular election set of inputs by checking a statistical sample of the outputs, you're in great shape because those techniques can be done without sophisticated software. They can be done by people looking at a small number of ballots.
Yeah, and if I can really quick, just to barely add to what Ron said, not only is it checking a statistical sample to say, yes, the outcome is correct, but what you're basically saying is, if you go and count those 9 million minus, or 10 million minus 400 ballots, if you actually go do the recount, you're going to find the same answer that we found in our tabulation. And that's what's so powerful about risk limiting audits. It's like doing a statistical recount where you can say, the law may say you need to do a recount and someone's paying for it, but what you're going to find is the exact same answer we found you with some level of confidence. Anyway.
I add just one quick little thing to that, please. And what is so powerful about that is it only takes, in this example, 400 of the ballots, so it's powerful to Commissioner's Court for funding purposes because you don't have to count the 4 million. You only had to count just a tiny % of it to prove up the whole election.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment on that as well. When we developed Prime 3, we asked a question: when was the last time someone certified or tested a pen? I have never heard that, meaning for an election, there's never been a case, and EAC, correct me if I'm wrong, that you actually required them to use this specific pen with these specs. So what we were getting at was exactly what Ron is saying, that we put the onus on the product. So even if someone could hack our system, which no one to date has, but if someone could hack it, the fact that everyone, independent of your ability or disability, is voting the same machine, and the product is the same for everyone, that in itself made it not only accessible and usable, but it added a layer of security because the machine couldn't distinguish between a deaf person or a person without arms. So it didn't know what was being produced. So when you did this post-election audit, it didn't matter if the machine was trying to trick you or not because it could not identify who you are to trick you. So the audit case for us was actually on the product, not on our ink pen, which is prime 3 in that case.
Questions from commissioners? If not, we would really like to thank all of you for your participation in this. It's been tremendously helpful for us as a commission, and we thank you for that. We do have one additional presentation for the commission on poll worker training that we will turn to, but we've kept you all a long time, and we thank you again for your participation. Sally?
Hi, I'm Sally Williams from Michigan. I promise to be brief. I won't be talking about voting systems today, but will be talking about some of the other technology programs we have going on in Michigan. One in particular, our latest offering, which is a brand new online training site. My role in Michigan, other than being lucky enough to work for Commissioner Thomas, I don't get to call him that very often, so, is the liaison, the conduit with all of the election officials all over Michigan. Got that to work. And one of the unique things in Michigan that affects just a few states is that we are one of the few that administer elections at the local level, which means that our touch points are really with about 1,600 individual jurisdictions, obviously very challenging in a lot of ways, especially in the way of providing technical support and procedural support and training. We're going to get to some of what we do there in a little bit, but some of the other things we wanted to mention quickly, we've also taken an approach in Michigan on some of our major technology programs to do internal development. We're not going that route with voting systems right now, but we have done so for several years with our qualified voter file, which we first developed back in 1996. We've got a system and a law and a process in place where we have set up an electronic connect between our voter file and our driver file to keep the records in sync, which is I think one of the only ones in the nation. We've self-developed an electronic poll book application that really runs from our qualified voter file, also electronic precinct list, which is more of a line chaser type of an application. And we've also developed a major voter resource in Michigan internally, which is our Voter Information Center. And just quickly, this is a look at our Voter Information Center. It's quite a tool. It's got a very easy URL, michigan.gov/vote. I don't know how well you can see some of this, but the major functionality allows voters to go in and do a search on their own record, confirm that they are registered, find out their polling place, sample ballot, maps to their polling places. Just last year, we also developed a mobile app for this as well, which has gotten some very good reviews. It also is a one-stop shop for everything related to voting. So we've got, a lot of information on absentee voting, military overseas, contacting your local election officials. We actually use the system which runs through our qualified voter file as well to hook voters up with their local election officials and also use that to generate our electronically transmitted UOCAVA ballots as well. Again, I'll generate it through our qualified voter file. The next slide is just a sample look at what you see. If you do a search on our Voter Information Center, probably not quite big enough, but you'll see a map to the polling place and your upcoming elections and deadlines and sample ballots, which are very interactive as well. But what I really wanted to hit on today was our latest offering, which is just getting started and will just grow over time, is our online training site. We call it the Michigan Elections E-Learning Center. We launched it in April of this year, and already we've got about 1,100 users enrolled. It's a very powerful system. We develop, and again, a lot of internal development. It's hosted by an outside agency, but we're doing all the development of the coursework and everything in it internally as well. We've got online courses. We've got all of our technical and procedure manuals, very heavily indexed for great search capabilities out there. We've got collaboration spaces where we can do kind of live webinars, blogs, discussion groups. We can have, groups by counties. Individuals are tracked. There is a sign-up, login process by individual, so we can track election officials for the counties that, we do get involved. They can track their county users. We can use it to assign specific coursework, say a brand new clerk coming in the door, assign just a series of courses there. We can put in pre-work and post-work and some other things to supplement a lot of our training. And we do a lot of now online surveying and gathering of data, trying to get rid of paper and data entry, and a lot of the gathering of our UOCAVA statistics from our 1,600 different jurisdictions has been really enhanced with our online surveying. And one of the other really strong things about this site is that it's available 24/7. We have a lot of very small jurisdictions with election officials that are election officials on the side. They have other jobs. So they can be difficult to reach and train, and the materials are out there for them 24/7 as well, which is nice. It's hosted, again, the outside organization I mentioned is Michigan Virtual University. This is a nonprofit organization in Michigan that really previously has operated with online learning targeted to schools and educators. They were very excited to partner with us. It's their first foray into state government, and they're now moving on to do so with other state agencies as well. The e-learning center really is targeted for, we've hit on some of this, election administrators really at all levels. A lot of the different user groups we have out there. We again have, the technical programs of the voter file and the e-poll book. We've got training modules out there and being developed for those that are kind of a nice supplement to, in-person training and dragging everybody to, the state capitol or places that aren't right next door for them. And a lot of just use by our own staff as well. Some of the offerings, I'm going to kind of skip through this one in the sake of time. I've kind of hit on a lot of the offerings, but wanted to just show you, this is a shot of our main screen. A lot of the stuff at the top of it is instructional. It really does show up a lot better on your own PC. But we've got several areas where people can access information in different ways. Up in the right-hand corner over here, we've created a lot of just nice tips and quick links to things that we think are easy and helpful, just small things. This is a shot of a couple of those. The top half is an election calendar that we've got out there. It's interactive. We keep it updated for every election. What's highlighted up there is the date for this November's election when precinct inspectors must be appointed. It's got links to the law that, if people question, what has to be done and when, that, is up there and constantly updated by our staff. People can use this, download it to their own Outlook calendars. They've been very excited about this. The bottom half shows a shot of just, we have a what's new button whenever we put new content out there. You'll see it under here. And what you'll see is there's lots of ways to list things by topic and, other ways. And what you'll see is then you'll see the format for what the item is. It's a little hard to read, but you'll see classroom training, you'll see online training, you'll see documents and things like that. So lots of ways to find what you're looking for. Another main part of the screen are the boxes towards the bottom half that kind of had the red, white, and blue little logos on them. Those are sorted by subject matter. So for example, if we look at, there's one in the bottom left that lists courses. you can just go right there. And if you just want to look at courses, or if you just want to look at everything we've got on the e-poll book, things like that, you can list things all kinds of different ways. And again, get to these types of listings and see the various type of materials that are out there. One we're highlighting is one of the post-coursework. We have an extensive clerk accreditation class for brand new clerks. When they first come in the door, they're required to pass an exam when they're done. We've put this out online that people can take and get their results immediately, get feedback on the information if they've answered anything incorrectly, and again, replaces a kind of a somewhat lengthy and clunky paper process that we had. I think this is my video. One of the other things I wanted to highlight real quick is we've done a series of training videos which incorporate...
Processing voters.
And we've got audio, too. We'll just show you a quick segment of this with the software that we've got.
As the voter enters
We
the polling
can put a
location,
lot of different
greet the
things
voter
together in
and
one
instruct
session.
the voter how to complete the application to vote.
We have some really good actors in here, too.
Ask the voter if he or she has photo ID.
But you'll see you can tie together all kinds of different types
The
of
following
media
types of
into
photo
one
ID qualify as
type of
acceptable.
course. We'll just take
Driver's
a minute
license
into
or
this.
personal identification card issued by Michigan or another
And
state.
this is the kind of thing, too. It's out online.
Federal or state
all of our
government
videos.
issued
We have a YouTube
photo
channel now as
identification.
well, where the
US
workers can
passport.
go out and, look at that
Military
after
identification
training.
card with photo.
The election officials,
Student
rather than the
identification with
age-old
photo
kind of
from a
textbook
high
training,
school or
can
an accredited
cut into these
institution of
back and
higher
forth, and they're
education.
right online for people as well.
Tribal
I'm just going to show you
identification
one more little
card
clip
with
of it.
photo.
If I can embarrass my boss.
If
So
a
this
voter
is just
does
an
not
example
have
of what to
valid
do
photo
when
ID
someone
in his
has
or
no
her
photo
possession
ID, and this poor gentleman had no
that voter
ID,
is still
so.
welcome to vote under Michigan law. These voters simply have to sign a separate affidavit attesting to their identity, and their ballots are tabulated normally.
I know. He never knew he was going to be put on display
When
like this.
using the
And then
electronic poll
we get
book,
into,
swipe the voter's
close-ups of our
driver's
e-poll
license,
book, and again,
or
kind of
type the
tie into
voter's name into
the
the appropriate
tips.
field to
This
find the
system we've
voter's
got out
record.
in about 90% of our
Verify that
precincts
the
now, and
information in
we
the
have some
e-poll book
separate
is the
modules
same
just
as
on
what the
e-poll
voter has
book, and,
indicated on the
some other things
application
to
to
just kind of
vote.
reiterate some of those key
If you
pieces
have
there.
a split
I'm
precinct,
gonna move on.
this is the time to
Oh, okay. So that was just a sample. That goes on all the way through the voter experience. Just a couple of other things. Also wanted to just highlight the indexing capability and the search capability. We have had quite an extensive website for years that we've put all of our materials out for election officials, and we have just had a pretty terrible time of trying to do quality searches out there on that. It's all of the state of Michigan materials, and you can look up poll book and you can get anything from state government. Well, in this system and with the indexing that we do, you can do searches in many different ways and just say e-poll book, or even, down to a finer line. Here's everything that mentions e-poll books. There's classes, there's frequently asked questions, there's manuals, things like that. So we really like the indexing and search capability of this as well. Moving forward, again, we've just really gotten started here. But again, the capabilities are very unlimited and powerful. Our focus right now is we had some legislation that went through last year requiring a 2-year continuing education, a re-accreditation program, as you will, for clerks. And we are fast and furiously developing a lot more content to go out there that will just build on over time. And again, can just assign to officials, automatically track who's taking them, and based on experience level. And as we get more and more items out there, we can, continue to refresh that as well. We're putting out modules, online modules for some of our major technical programs, which, prior to now, we'd bring people in real small groups to Lansing. Very difficult for some people, but we're putting out a whole series for qualified voter file training, e-poll book training. There's several pieces out there. as well. And we're going to expand on the collaboration centers and the groups. We've set up a user group for the site itself, inviting people in to give us suggestions for other types of materials to put out there. Those that use certain types of voting equipment, for example, can have collaboration spaces. They can, share their materials, how they train, things like that. Webinars, we're planning one now. We also have a brand-new post-election audit program that really goes end-to-end, just from election official responsibilities, on election day, pre and post and election day items, which we're tracking the results of those to develop additional training courses to focus on. We're putting a webinar out on, the items we're finding in our audits to bring more reminders to people and things like that. And then any sessions that we put out there, even, a live training session we can record and place out there for future use. So just very excited, very, lots of capabilities here. Happy to share any other information if anybody else is interested or answer any questions. Okay. If not,
Yeah, just one closing question to Sally. We'll close that. Did Commissioner Thomas complain about the way he was treated at the polling place?
not that day. Actually, we talked him into being an actor. He didn't know where that was going to take him.
Well, it was a compelling performance.
He modestly signed his name, Clark Kent, so.
Yes. Somebody mentioned auditing the results of Academy Awards, and we wouldn't have to do that here. In any event, thank you all very much for coming. As Commissioner Ginsburg said, this was a thought that we had to bring people together in this sort of conversational framework and to try to really initiate a dialogue, and it worked well beyond any reasonable expectation we could have had. So thank you very much for coming.